It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays. And for those of you who don't know, there was no content yesterday because Monday was Canadian Thanksgiving. So I was practicing wellness and not murdering myself that day because I still need to do the episode if it's not therapy for this week. So I didn't take Thanksgiving off, but I worked less. And then I made a fancy lentil and quinoa dish with like cranberries and like mock chicken and stuff like fake chicken, not mock chicken. I forgot mock chicken's an actual thing that contains pork. Meat is weird. I can't eat it. And yes, can't, not don't. So we're talking today about 5 things you don't say to someone with PTSD. And if you notice, I'm looking here, I have made a list. It is not scripted, but I have made bullet points. Again, if you like this content for the foreseeable future, please help donate to save Eileen's Aunt Alicia's house. We are at 38% of goal. That is freaking exciting. So we're getting there. Link in the description box of this video. So, okay, 5 things you don't say to someone with PTSD. And truthfully, I'm going to move it over here, the list. This is stuff you probably shouldn't say to anybody, but I'm saying this in the context of people specifically with trauma because these are all things that people have said to me while I was triggered in the last month or so. And so I know, like, intensely how not cool this is, but I'm going to be able to explain to you why and what the alternative is. So this isn't just taking away your ability to communicate. You can say the same thing in most cases, just in a more precise way. It's actually closer to what people I think are actually going for when they say these things. We just have this weird parts of speech, like the first one, the don't let it get to you. I take this phrase out of my vocabulary. It's not the same as don't let them see it get to you. That's valid advice. In certain instances, like walk away or something, just don't show it. But it is not possible to just stop your emotional reactions for something. Anybody, but especially someone with a trauma response. We don't want the trauma response. At least I don't. I would prefer I didn't have it. It's a fact of my life. And you're just making someone feel like shit by saying, don't let it get to you, because let's face it, as soon as you feel the need to say, don't let it get to you, it's probably already gotten to that person making the phrase. Just kind of an unintentional asshole move. Notice I said unintentional. Similarly, don't lecture the person of, I've dealt with this all my life, it doesn't bother me. First of all, I've found people who give speeches like that tend to be completely lacking in self-awareness about how much things bother them. A lot of people don't actually feel their feelings, and so it's pretty clear something's gotten to them. They just can't admit it. And one of the and maybe it doesn't actually bother you, but everybody's different. Right? There are certain things that don't bother me. A lot of words people are sensitive to don't bother me. Even words I don't like, that is not the same as a trigger, right? I don't like the word bitch, but it doesn't trigger a trauma response the way some other things do because it's not directly linked to the traumatic event. Triggers are this weird thing. Triggers, to quote Solomon, are not just things you don't like or bad feelings. They are things that pull you out of the present and into that traumatic moment in the past because our brain has this keep you safe, stay in the cave function that's basically, okay, when this thing got said or this song played or something like that, then a bad thing happened. So the brain's like, if we avoid that phrase or sound, the bad thing won't happen. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what our brain is doing to us, right? It's instinct. It's a reaction neurochemically that happens faster than cognitive thought. So when people say they can't help it, they really can't. Reducing and eliminating triggers is retraining the nervous system through prolonged exposure therapy and some healing. There are things that used to trigger me, like the smell of beer, that don't anymore, and that was just working events where I had to smell beer. Eventually and that does not mean you force people to be triggered. I chose to go into those environments. It made me nauseous for a while, but through that, consensual exposure therapy, my brain rewrote the associations with that stimulus. And that is a gradual process that takes time. Do not deliberately trigger someone. My God. The next thing, any claim that somebody is reacting in a triggered state on purpose or with deliberate intent or to get attention, you are basically encouraging the person of faking a trauma response when they're doing that. I don't think a lot of people realize that, but nothing someone does when triggered, when in trauma, is deliberate. Does that mean we're not aware of what we're doing? No, but we're not thinking clearly. Now, there's a responsibility on the traumatized person, right? To go, I'm not okay. I'm having issues right now. And to let you know in advance. In general, it's better to not assume intents. If you think a person is doing something on purpose or being deliberately cruel or intentionally manipulating you, the only sane thing to do there is end the conversation, because a deliberately cruel person, the minute you say that, they're just going to keep doing it because they know it hurt you. Same with you're being manipulative. A truly manipulative person is just going to go, no, I'm not, because they're going to gaslight you, right? It doesn't actually do any good. What you're really saying is that comment hurt me, or I'm having trouble dealing with this. And that shared vulnerability when someone is dealing with trauma means an awful lot, because they're not feeling lesser than you, right? And again, this doesn't mean that traumatized people aren't responsible for anything we do. That's not true. Part of the reason I work very hard to stay symptomatic, to the point that people think I'm this awful bitch, is because I want to stay aware and in control of what I'm doing, not get pushed into a trauma response where I don't have that regulation. I don't have that control. So when someone is traumatized, it doesn't mean you don't hold them accountable, especially if they've been lax in their recovery. Hold them accountable for being lax in their recovery. Don't insist they were deliberately awful to you when they're actively in trauma. Make sense? Makes sense. Because, well, okay, I'll save this all sort of comes to the last point, so I'll move on to the next one. You're so dramatic is something that, oh my God, drama. I know drama is this term, and some people love drama. Some people love being the center of drama. But for someone who has a trauma condition, PTSD, CPTSD, something like that, it's embarrassing to be triggered, especially in public. It's not an attention-seeking behavior. It's really humiliating. I know it is for me. I suspect it's the same for anybody else, because, being dramatic, that's something of an intentional thing, right? Like, oh, I'm just going to be big and out there and call attention to myself. Trauma, again, it's a nervous system response. It is, everything is moving faster than we can process it, which is why it feels like everything's moving in slow motion. And, overwhelm, if you're prone to overwhelm, if you've ever had, say an autistic meltdown, that's not deliberate, right? You didn't decide, like some people, true bullies, right? They're like, I'm going to get big and mean and bully people, right? I'm going to yell at you to make you do what I want. It's not that. It's just this panic response. And panic is freeze, fight, fawn, or flight, right? So somebody could start talking a mile a minute. Someone could suddenly not be able to respond, or not even be able to move, or just explode in a fight response, right? Or like rush out of the room, or even be physically sick. And people dismiss this as drama when that person is suffering legitimately. And when you think about it that way, you realize how much you're minimizing this person's suffering by dismissing it as drama. Even if you think personally drama's cool, it's not going to read to that person as cool that they were dramatic. See also things like hot mess, that kind of stuff. That stuff, it may be true, but a lot of people are faking it till they make it with trauma, or they don't have the luxury. I mean, if I could take a month off right now, I would, but I can't, because then I wouldn't make any money. So I'm doing the best I can, and, I am getting a lot of support, but there are a lot of people as well, just because I deal with a lot of people on a given day. Some people, too many, are being the polar opposite of supportive. And that, makes recovery more challenging. Everybody's got their cross to bear, right? There's a reason I say be the hero of your own story and not anybody else's. Similarly, something like don't take things so personally, right? This is different than don't let it get to you. This is something somebody said to me on Friday, and as well, I won't repeat how Blazin described it, but it was a shared background, let's say. Don't take things so personally is an asshole thing to say, and I'm going to tell you why, right? Because a lot of people may not intend it, some people do. There's nothing more personal than trauma. I repeat, there's nothing more personal than trauma. So telling someone not to take a trauma trigger personally is asinine. And this wasn't a trauma trigger per se on Friday. I just basically said, when someone admits they're struggling and then you choose then to give them critique that really was a fundamental attribution error. It's not that they're unprepared. It's not that they didn't take the time. It was that due to circumstances beyond their control, things couldn't be granular or clear, right? Sometimes it's better to give someone just that grace, give someone the benefit of the doubt, because that is the compassionate response. And it's not personal to say to somebody, look, now is not the time, especially when it's in a video directed at, the internet. I choose the comments I do for Feedback Friday because everybody can learn. It's useful. It's not just attacking somebody. It's here's why this is not okay in, something of an entertaining fashion. And I never intend to hurt anybody. Sometimes it stings. But that's not my intention, right? And so often don't take things so personally is a projection, not truly telling somebody that there's something they have to improve. Everybody should take personal things personally, right? If somebody really loves Star Wars and you rip on Star Wars, they're going to take it personally because they love it so much it's an extension of their identity. Trauma and identity threat have a big overlap. Remember that trauma is the brain registering danger. And we live in this fucked up age where reputational damage is just as big a threat to people because it can get you fired. It can get you ostracized. And social shunning, ostracization is deeply painful to humans because we are a collective species, even introverts, right? We are cooperative species. This is not collectivist ideology. This is just the reality. We became the dominant species on the planet by working in groups, as opposed to like lone hunter tigers kind of thing. I don't know that about tigers. Maybe I'm wrong. Apologies to tigers who's, tiger fursona people. I could be wrong. Correct me if I am. I assume I'm wrong there. But you know what I mean? Like, this isn't a lone apex predator thing where we rely on society. We rely on people. Hello, Scout. I said apex predator and Scout appeared. Hey, buddy. Say hi, Scout. Hi. Yeah. He said hi. Did you hear that? Yeah, we need other people, even if other people scare us. And so even those reputational things, they are personal because they're threats. Make sense? All right, great. And again, I'm bringing this stuff up because I am giving the benefit of the doubt and don't assume people are, hi Scout, are doing these things on purpose, unlike Scout, who is doing what he's doing totally on purpose right now. So again, I'm giving benefit of the doubt. I don't think anybody that did this deliberately, or maybe the person did do it deliberately to be a dick, but I'm erring on the side of caution and assuming they didn't. So I'm taking my own advice in number 2. So again, stuff like don't let it get to you or compare, oh, it doesn't bother me, suggesting that means it shouldn't bother anybody. Don't do it. The toughen up pep talks, they don't cure trauma. It's not cognitive. It's neurological, right? We do an end run around it with the cognition, but ultimately that's just kind of going in the side door because the front ain't opening. The lock is seized. Yeah, it's an indirect way. 2, any idea, any claim that the intent is deliberately to do something bad or manipulative or cruel. 3, the idea of so dramatic, don't say it. 4, don't take things so personally. And because this is all coming up for the last thing that you don't say to someone with some sort of trauma condition. Hi, Scout. The last one is, you're too much for me to handle. And the reason that this is a problem is this usually is on the end of a continuum where the person saying it didn't set boundaries along the way and tell the person with a trauma condition or anybody. They didn't set boundaries along the way. They didn't say, this is bothering me, or this is too hard for me, or I need some space, I need some time along the way. They didn't set boundaries, and so it just feels like it comes out of nowhere for the person on the receiving end of this statement. And I know a lot of my autistic clients have really deep trauma connected to the fact that all of a sudden one day someone just said, this is too much for me, you're too much for me to handle, I'm gone. And they were just gone. And there was no conversation, no attempt, no opportunity to at least try to do better. And I relate to that. A lot of us have had things where all of a sudden somebody explodes on us and we're like, what the hell just happened? And I used to be that person because I'm so introverted. And part of trauma, and it was partially introversion, partially I was afraid I'd be mocked for saying, can you stop that, please? And part of trauma therapy was making me realize that it is my responsibility to set boundaries and my responsibility to tell the truth along the way. And that means not lying and say something's okay or doesn't bother me that actually isn't okay and does bother me. Even though it stings to hear that something is annoying someone, you'd rather know and stop doing it while you still have the chance to correct it, instead of the first time you find out is when there's no chance to fix it. Trust me, the vast majority of people, okay, they may have a bad reaction because they're embarrassed, and learning how to deal with embarrassment is a learned skill. But even with that, they would rather know. Unless somebody just can't handle anything at all. And then, you may decide that this is not a person you want to have around, but you need to give them the chance really to improve, or it's not fair, right? Too many people blame other people for being too much or not enough, when really the issue is they're not saying anything. They're not enforcing their boundaries. They're not letting people know, look, I only have 30 minutes here. Look, please, I can't talk after 10 p.m., for instance, and enforce that, right? If you say I can't talk after 10 p.m. and somebody calls you after 10 p.m., don't pick up the fucking phone or Zoom or Facebook Messenger call or FaceTime or whatever. Just don't answer. And if somebody gets pissed at you for that, well, then that's on them, because it's like, I told you that I can't talk after 10. Just don't answer, right? It's your responsibility to set your own boundaries. And if you're not telling people that they're violating their boundaries without being aware of it, then it's not that person is too much. It's that you're not giving them enough information. One of the big reasons that a lot of people stay stuck, I know this was me for years, and I see it reflected in a lot of clients as well. They are terrified that they deserve to be alone or they deserve to be abandoned, and that anybody who gets to know them will reject them or think they're awful. And so they don't cut out the people in their lives who don't respect boundaries, who aren't considerate, because they don't think they can do any better. And once, I just got to the point where I had to cut a bunch of people off because they were conduits for information to the stalker, basically. And when I got away from them, I was finally like, what a bunch of terrible people and losers. My life is so much better without them. And after that, it's like, fuck it. People don't, I'll be really fair. I will, if I have to block somebody, if I have to kick them, I mean, I'm pretty reachable. If somebody really wanted to make it right, they could reach me. But I always say, look, this is why I'm cutting things off. This is what I expect to change. This is what I need. People can't say they don't know what I was looking for there, but so many people do. It's gaslighting. It's not my problem. And that's when it's like, oh, you're a bitch, or you're too much, or you're this, or you're that. And it's like, anybody that's summing up your entire being because of a few inconvenient circumstances probably doesn't have your best interests at heart. Even if that's just because they learned some really terrible habits along the way. So hopefully you found this video interesting. To summarize, 5 things you don't say to somebody with PTSD. Don't let it get to you. You're doing this on purpose somehow. You're so dramatic. Don't take things so personally. And you're too much for me to handle. Those are things that, don't say them, especially to people with a trauma condition, but people in general, maybe work to find alternatives. What you're really saying there, will I find alternatives? Because Scout is sitting on my mouse pad, although I just moved. And I hoped you liked the guest star for this video, Scout the cat. Hey, bud? Yeah. All right, everybody. Remember, if you like this stuff, chip in a few pesos to Eileen's aunt's Save Her House. 38% of goal right now. It's literal pesos because they're in Mexico. But survived 2 hurricanes. This house, apparently the government has put, well, not direct hits from the hurricanes, but, a lot of rain. The government's apparently put in pumps to try to minimize the groundwater erosion. So we still got time. 38% of goal. We're getting there. Let's do this. And I really appreciate it and hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching and be well.